Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
Smart cities are on the way, and they're probably here to stay. There's a lot to look at in the way of smart cities, and Columbus, Ohio, which is just a short skip and a hop from our studio here in Urbana, is one of the smart city examples that has captured the attention of the nation. They've done everything from improving electric vehicle charging to testing self-automated vehicles for delivery, providing Wi-Fi kiosks available to different people, new kinds of food delivery, and lots more. We're going to look at today not only what Columbus has done, but what's likely here to stay and what might be coming to a city near you soon. We're also going to talk about solar power's land grab. As solar power is on the rise and California is now mandating it for certain types of new construction in its state, the question becomes, when will this happen in a state near you? And should solar take up other land that could be used to build houses or that is farmland? Well, environmentalists now have a different concern about solar power. We've got lots to talk about. But of course, a conversation on smart cities, the latest technology, and solar energy just couldn't be complete without
TrueChat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, since a lot of what we're going to talk about today has to do with the sun, I decided to pick a sun-centric word, parhelion. 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 It is a noun, and it is a bright colored spot of light, sometimes seen on the ring of a solar halo. So there you go, folks. Broadening your scientific brain. Why should you care? Well, smart cities, we're trying to save energy. We're trying to cool things off. We're trying to stop pollution. Solar power, alternative fuel choice, gas prices are on the rise. If you're worried about the planet, I think what's interesting about today when we talk about it is that you have environmentalists who are arguing against solar power. Justin, first we're going to talk about the smart city of Columbus, Ohio, and how it's put them ahead of some of its peers. So here in the Midwest, we can actually lead the way every once in a while.
That's right. Well, and Columbus is Mr. Lance Jackson's old stomping ground, right?
That's right.
So very, very familiar with the area. And I think it's great to see, Columbus taking an initiative to look into this kind of stuff. Basically what they did is a $50 million smart city challenge. It was $50 million over basically 5 years. 2016 is kind of when things got underway. And its goal was to explore basically a variety of options. And one of the big things that they pointed to is that overall, something important to understand is that they learned a lot from it, right? There's a lot of benefits that are going to be valuable to the future, but it was a big learning opportunity to test different things, see things that do work, things that might not work. And the leader of the project pointed out in the article from the Columbus Dispatch, which is linked at thestateofus.org, that one of the things that folks need to understand about smart cities, or at least in his opinion, the way they have to be viewed is it's not just tech for tech's sake. It has to be about addressing challenges that cities face. And when we use technology to address those challenges, that's where smart cities can really thrive. Tech for tech's sake, while it can be interesting, is not necessarily something that a lot of cities are going to want to invest in. But as we know, as we're facing these increasing issues of inequity, especially in larger cities, and just issues of access to things, right? Like Wi-Fi or the increasing amount of electric vehicles out there, which have greatly increased since people started buying cars again. All of these things are going to be challenges that cities have to deal with, not the least of which, of course, is climate change and the temperatures in cities increasing. And smart cities seek to address that in a variety of ways. Some things like traditional technology, you think of, well, install electric vehicle charging station, right? We got this parking garage. We put in an electric vehicle charging station because that way if people with an electric vehicle come in, they can actually be charged while they're parking, while your gasoline-powered vehicle is just sitting there not doing nothing, So there's some things like that that are real straightforward, providing Wi-Fi hotspots publicly available for people that may not have access to reliable Wi-Fi at their home. Those are some of the more traditional things. Some of the less traditional things are things like, let's cool down city with some new old tech, which is, let's put, for example, plant life on roofs, right? Because that can greatly decrease the temperature inside the building, add some insulation, and also has the added benefit of, taking some of the pollution out of the air.
You know what I think is a really neat idea, because people are going to say, well, who's going to pay for all this? And as a result of all this paperwork, the article shows that American Electric Power, AEP, the local power company, is working with local businesses, communities, and apartment complexes to offer $10 million of rebates and other incentives to deploy the hundreds of charging stations throughout the region. So, hey, we're going to give people a kickback to get them to do this. So what's the cost to the average consumer? Well, actually just a very small increase on their electric bill. That most of the cover to do this is going to be done by big business offering rebates and incentives to smaller businesses and apartment buildings and the like. And it's like, yeah. I mean, I know that, this is one of the ideas that you had, Justin, when you ran for mayor a couple of years ago. Everybody said, well, we can't do that. Well, yeah, we're going to do it through giving businesses an incentive. And here's AEP actually doing that, giving an incentive to other businesses to invest in solar. I mean, that's just, wow. So now it's going to make my city better, and I don't have to pay for it.
The $50 million came from basically two different pots, $40 million and then an additional $10 million grant. But the Ohio State University, Lance, did research on the project that showed that the $40 million award program generated an estimated gross metropolitan product of $173.39 million and led to 2,366 new jobs. I don't know about you, but if I had $40 million and somebody said, well, I'll give you $173 million for your $40 million, that sounds like a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, over 4-to-1, right? Over a 4-to-1 ratio. You put in $4, you put in $1
in 5 years.
Right, I'll give you $4.
Yeah,
and we're always talking about, well, how are people, as we're losing factory jobs in this country just because of drones and things like that. I'm not getting into immigration, but just the fact that more and more machines are going to do jobs that humans have done. Here, you're able to create 2,400 new jobs in a futuristic endeavor. I mean, that seems like another. So now it's a win-win-win, right? You're going to have other people pay for it. You're going to make $4 for every dollar you spend, and you're going to create jobs for an economy for the future. What's not to like? And obviously, if Columbus, Ohio can do it, this kind of thing, I think the point is this kind of thing could be put into place in any metropolitan region.
Right. And some other less, monumental things occurred as part of it, but they're optimization things. The more people that live in cities, the more we have to think about how do people get from point A to point B, right? And that's not just, well, if I'm driving in a car, but Columbus said, well, if you're driving in a car, we could deploy this technology that makes it easier to find a place to park, right? If you've been in a big city, there can be nothing more frustrating, right, than you've been driving a while and you got to where you thought you were going to park and then there was no place to park. And if you could have known that before you went there, then you could have found a different place instead of wasting time and jamming up the street, right? Because
correct,
you can't find where you need to park, so now you're driving around and you're adding to the traffic, right, all the while. So there were some things like that. There's also on the transportation front some things like improving ride hailing, carpooling, bicycle and scooter access. That's been a big push. Not only is it good, right, from an environmental standpoint, because bicycles, right, we have no energy output other than what we can put into them. Yes, in the manufacturing portion, but not in the actual operation of them. And on the scooter front, those are pretty much all electric powered. So and we'll be talking about solar energy, right? As we use more green forms to generate electricity, from a climate standpoint, it's good, but from a health standpoint too, right? Because we know, you and I have talked about this, Lance, people are happier, right, when they get more time outside.
Or if, you're like, I'm not in shape to ride, but you can grab one of these scooters out of the locked station and ride it down to the ballpark or down to your concert or whatever. Okay, you're still out in fresh air. The air is better to breathe, all of those kinds of things. And then you just park it and at the station there where you stop and get off. It's not like you didn't have to invest in a scooter. You didn't have to invest in a bicycle. You can just pick them up. The city owns them and you just ride them from place to place. I mean, what could be better? You don't have that investment. You don't have to walk it up the stairs to your apartment and store it or whatever. You just walk down to the streets, you take it, you go wherever you want, and you leave it when you're done.
Yep. And I think we're seeing that increasing, and obviously cities are catching up with that. The one elephant, right, that we haven't talked a lot about is autonomous vehicles, self-driving vehicles.
Well, that's because your friendly redneck liberal doesn't like autonomous vehicles. That's why we'll talk about it.
Very scared of.
Yeah. No, I'm not scared. I just don't like them. There's a difference.
But you don't like them because of the lack of control.
Well, partly, and we've seen, and we won't do those. We won't do those articles, but there have been articles out there in major metropolitan newspapers where we still have some work to do on these things.
Yeah, well, and I mean, in the Columbus Dispatch article, right? They mentioned that they had some self-driving shuttles that were deployed as part of this that people were actually traveling on, but then they switched because they got nervous after one of the shuttles deployed its emergency system and decided to rapidly stop because the system detected a deviation in its steering. So the safety protocol worked exactly as it was supposed to, but it disturbed the passengers on board. So therefore they switched to people driving the shuttles instead of having them work autonomously. But I think the point in this is, and you and I have talked briefly about this before to folks, why aren't self-driving cars widely deployed yet? Well, two things. One is there's, I think, a big fear to overcome with them. And two, we've also realized, these companies have realized that are working on this, it's a very complicated problem. There's a lot of variation in roads and streets, weather conditions. There's so many things happening that you're not really consciously thinking about when you're driving, that you have to have a computer that can reliably anticipate and deal with all kinds of variables. For example, the shuttles didn't run when there was snow on the ground because they couldn't, because there was no programming to deal with when you can't see the road.
Exactly.
What do we do? How do we maintain spacing? How do we ensure that we're going the right way? There's a lot of factors, and part of what has to catch up is not just the capacity of the vehicle, because there's a lot of intuition that people can do, right? Well, I don't really know what the speed limit is here, but I think that it might be this. And I'm not really sure where the lane is because I can't see it, but it's probably about here. Those are very guesstimate type things, not very imperfect, right? I mean, we do our best and we do an okay job, but they want these things to be not as good, but better than people at driving. And on a perfect sunny day, on roads that are paved right with the right lines and that are mapped, they are better than people. And we know that. They are safer than people. In weird conditions or unusual roads or odd spots, they're not, and that's part of what has to still be overcome. So I think there's a lot of encouraging things in smart cities. I think your autonomous vehicle component, obviously we still got a little ways to go before people are going to be comfortable with accepting that. We have to know that they can do stuff in lots of varied situations, like there's snow in Columbus, Ohio, right, Lance? They got to know what to do when there's snow on the ground. They can't just,
you got to factor in everything. The world is not perfect, right?
We're not just going to not run because there's no snow. So more to talk about for sure. That's kind of our smart city pieces. But what's going on with solar power? Because it'd be difficult to talk about smart cities without talking about changing how they're powered. Well, solar power has hit a new snag, and that's environmentalists. Why would environmentalists not want solar power? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
So, Lance, we've talked about smart cities. We got some self-driving cars. We got all these scooters and bicycles and food delivery and parking optimization and electric vehicle charging stations. All that's going to take power, though, right? We're going to need to power this stuff. And we're ideally going to need to do it in a way that doesn't heat up these cities even more.
And right now we're using fossil fuels to generate the electricity that are being used to charge all these electric items.
Right. Well, a lot of them. It depends, right? I mean, it depends on the city you're in, where you're at. But yes, the majority of are like your cell phone, right? Most people listening to the show, right? you charge your cell phone. Well, that's all electric. Your cell phone, as it's burning that energy, is not causing any pollution. But when you charged it, how was the electricity that you used to charge it generated?
Okay, from the article, solar generation has grown to 4.5% of the nation's electricity supply. Now, that's up from 0.1% in 2010. So that's good, but 95% of our electric is still done by fossil fuels.
Right. Well, wait, what the statistic was that solar energy?
Solar generation has grown to 4.5. So, okay, you got a little bit of wind, but solar's the big one in the United States. So still, that over 90% of our electricity is still generated from fossil fuels. So we got a long way to go. But the problem is like, okay, now we've got some places around the country that are saying, yeah, solar energy is it. And we're going to build these big solar energy areas and we're going to mandate it, like you said, in California on new construction and at least in residential areas. And along come the environmentalists who have been warning us about the ozone layer and the planet getting too warm, saying, well, wait a minute, you can't put it there because you're going to destroy the desert tortoise's living grounds. You're going to destroy where I ride my ATV on the weekends. This is where I recreate. You can't put solar panels here because you'll ruin my recreation area. So which is it? Are we going to save the planet? Or are we going to get rid of species? Take away your play area in order to do it? Or can we do both? It's like those ideas, right? Not in my backyard. It's good somewhere else. Don't do it for me. So, I mean, what do you do here? Because that's what the article is talking about. That's listed on the State of Us is that, okay, here are all these great ideas in Nevada and California and New Mexico. And it's the environmentalists that are stepping up and saying, for a variety of reasons, this is why it's bad to do that here, or at least in the size and the scope of what's being planned.
So one of the items, because, and this is for what it's worth, our little county here in Ohio is going through this right now. There's a solar generation company that wants to come in, has struck some deals with some local people that own farmland and other land. It's not just farmland, but some other unused land. And they want to put in solar panels on that ground, right? They want to do ground mount solar.
But locally, they've also, in our county, stopped a wind farm project.
Right.
So
well, and
we're not, I'm not even getting into the government yet. I'm just talking about the environments, but there's a lot of government. And this is another one. Okay. We talk about government regulation. It's the Republicans in the state of Ohio that are trying to put more government regulation on something other than fossil fuels. Right. And it's like, wait a minute, it's always the Democrats that do regulations, right? Because Republicans are for open and free business to do what you want. Unless you're solar powered or wind powered in Ohio, then we're going to make it easier for the local governments to stop you. We're going to make it more red tape so that then we don't have to put up with it and it's going to go to other states. Well, how many jobs are we losing? It just, again, just doesn't make sense to me. But anyway.
Well, I think what I was getting at with one of the concerns that people have locally is that you're taking up farmland in exchange for solar. And this is one of those, it's a little different, but it's a similar concern to if you're putting these solar panels here, you're going to destroy an environment, right? For some kind of animal that lives on the planet or insects or something else, right? We're going to trade, right? And it's not unlike, for example, when we've talked about, do you allow drill mining in national parks? Well, I mean, you can, right? There's natural resources there. We need those to power things. And before climate change was a big concern, well, why not, right? We got access to them. Shouldn't we make use of them? The economy needs it. We need it. But it's that question of trade-off. So is there a way to do it without sacrificing as much land? And the answer is yes and no. Some amount of land sacrifice is almost assuredly necessary. At the same time, you can greatly reduce the amount of land required. And California is looking at doing that, right, Lance? Because in 2020, California became the first state to mandate that solar panels be required on all new single-family residences and multifamily residences up to 3 stories high. The reason that 3 stories is key is because if you're familiar with California, Most new developments look to go wide rather than tall, because especially in places where heat is a concern, right? The lower that we can stay to the ground, the less stories we have, the more efficient the building can be. So we build these big, wide 3-story apartment complexes. Well, you're still required to put solar on those lands. So basically, the reason that this is
also the whole earthquake thing in parts of California,
Yeah.
you want to stay closer to the ground if at all
you don't
possible.
want to be up in the top and yep. So there's the practical, safety component as well of the closer to the ground. So lots of reasons that I know a lot of people love California, but
No, I mean, and I think that's good, and we're seeing some lawmakers thinking ahead. But now here's my other side, right? If it's my land, where's my right to do with my land as I want? If I decide that I don't want to farm, if I own a golf course and I want to sell that golf course to somebody who wants to buy the land and put in a housing development, do I have the right to do that? If I own a farm and I want to plant soybeans, don't I have the right to do that? If I own land and I want to use it for a solar farm, don't I have the right to do that? What happened to freedom in America? What happened? This is my land. I have the right to choose. I'm not growing an illegal crop. I'm not, where's freedom? It's my land. What do I get to do with it?
well, you get to do
Do we have an HOA across the entire country now? We have a homeowners association anywhere in the country because that's my bane of my existence. I will not move into certain communities because they have HOAs. Nobody's going to tell me what I can do with my house. You can't paint it that color. If you're going to build a fence, you have to build it here. If you're going to put up this, you have to do it just like this. You have to have these windows. Heck no, it's my property. I'm going to do whatever I want with it. If you as the neighbors don't like it, too bad, move.
Well, but to an extent, right?
And that's what this sounds like to me, a national HOA.
For all of us, it's a bit of it's all like, if we go back 200 years, right? It's your property. You pretty much could do whatever you wanted with it. Today, if you're not in a city, right? You live out in a rural community somewhere, or you live outside of even an incorporated area, just like, on a farm or something, you probably have the greatest flexibility. Do you have unlimited flexibility? No, because there's zoning laws that prohibit you from doing certain things with your land. This is not, when we think about all the things the government already mandates that you do, which we could talk about. We could certainly talk about whether or not they should be able to do as much as they do when it comes to your house. But they already do, I think, so many things that most of us don't think about, right?
But now they want to stop me from doing something with it. They tell me what I have to do with it. I'm arguing. Now they're telling me I can't do these things with it.
It's very unlikely that they would stop you from drilling for oil or natural gas, right? It's much more likely that they might stop solar.
But if you want to try to help the environment, well, you can't do that.
But I think the California thing brings up an interesting proposition, right? This idea of requiring solar panels on new buildings, because people, obviously, objection number one is going to be, well, now it's going to cost a lot more to build my house, right? Because I got to put these things in. On the other hand, California also provides a tax credit for a large portion of your panels. I believe, at least as of 2020, the tax credit's 26%.
Well, and you also, in many parts of California in the summertime, you have rolling blackouts happening now. So do you want to pay for solar panels, or do you want to have to do without electricity for 4 hours a day?
Yep.
Besides what, like you were going into, which is a good point, how much do you want to pay for it? Because there are also locations in California, I know from family members that are out there, that when you use electricity, you get charged different rates. That if you use it in non-peak times, it's cheaper. If you use it during peak times, which is obviously during the day when everybody's going to work, then they charge you more. So if you charge your cell phone, using that same example you were talking about earlier, from 9 to 5 in the day, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., it costs you more than if you charge it from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. So you're dealing with that already. You get a tax rebate at the state level, maybe even the federal level, plus you maybe save enough energy that you don't have to do without electricity with the rolling blackouts that occur occasionally. And you don't have maybe you can get away from a tiered system of electrical rates.
Let's talk about what's next for solar. And also, Let's hear from your friendly redneck liberal. He's, kind of tossing this idea of maybe he needs solar power, right? But what are the concerns that people have, and what are the answers to those? Because as he said, it seems kind of like a no-brainer. But what do we need to address? And you've got one person here, right, myself, that has solar power, and we've got your friendly redneck liberal that does not yet have solar power. So how do we get people from point A to point B, right? Because it's great to talk about it. We can cut down land use if more people put it on their homes, right? Because we don't need as much land then to be taken up with solar energy. So what do we do to get from point A to point B? To find out, keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
The Jackson Family Estate, your friendly redneck liberal. So you got some land, right? You got a little land. You got some roof space.
Yep.
And you got some trees.
Yep.
So you're thinking about, I have solar panels now, right? And I think I'm going on now about, we're coming up on a year with them.
Mm-hmm.
So I've gotten a pretty good sampling now because I've been through fall and winter and much of summer now. I think I got a month and a half to go before we're at a full year. And it's been it was an interesting experience. Learned a lot from it, I think. And enough so that now looking at one of the commercial properties, hopefully installing some solar there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the friendly redneck liberal's thoughts about solar energy?
Well, I'm all in on solar power and even on my estate. The problem for me is that I don't understand it well enough. I don't know what I would be getting into, and I could be easily taken advantage of by a fly-by-night company or somebody who was just looking to make some money. My initial distrust of anybody I don't know doing the job.
Sure.
All of those, I don't know if that's a Midwestern thing or being old or just being your friendly redneck liberal that happens.
Or some combination of.
But if I knew I could trust it, and I can't even say it's cost prohibitive because I don't know how much it's going to cost. But I'm leery to pull the trigger because it's new. But I totally believe in it. It's like I would like to buy an electric vehicle. But how much work is it going to be at this stage in my life to put in the electric that's needed, or to put in the charging station or the receptacle in my garage or in my home or on the outside of my home to charge the car? It's like I want to do these things because I believe in them and I think they're good. It's just hard to teach an old dog new tricks, and I don't know what it's going to cost.
There's a lot of people that if you said, well, we could give you closer to a fixed electric bill every month, right? And lock in your price for energy for the next 25 years. I think most people would say, well, that sounds pretty good. Well, how do we do that? Then you tell them it's solar and it's like, well, but for valid reasons, right? If people don't.
But I don't have a problem with it being solar. It's like, okay, how much is it going to cost me to put in?
Understanding it, right? Is
right.
Because you want to know, if you're going to invest, because it's not cheap, it's a decent amount of money. If you're going to invest this kind of money in your home, right? Just like if you're going to put a new roof or something on your home, you want to feel like you understand what's going to happen in the process. How good is the roof going to be that I'm going to put on, right? Because we know there's a wide range of different stuff you could do with your roof. How long is it going to last? How much is it going to cost me? What could go wrong? A big part of understanding it, and in fairness to you, because there are some fly-by-night companies out there, right? That are they just want to get you the panels and go, and they don't really care about if it's been designed properly or what's going on. There are some great websites. One of them that I would recommend to people check out is energysage.com. So that's the word energy and sage, SAGE.com. This is a free site. And what's really great about it, and this is not sponsored, of course, by the way, by Energy Sage. This is just a genuine endorsement. You give them your zip code, and immediately, without having provided any other information, you're going to get a map. And I'm pulling this up here so that Lance can view it with me. It gives you a map of solar projects that have recently been put in your area.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows you the different people that have received quotes from 5 different installers. what the payback period was, the 20-year savings, and the financing options that were available. And that's, you don't have to worry about the name of the installer. If you want to proceed to get your own quote, you enter your property address, what type of property is, first name, last name, and email. And then what happens is Energy Sage, without actually giving your information to the third party, is going to collect quotes for you and then show you, here's the quotes from these different installers. And these are all vetted installers, that Energy Sage has already looked into and said, these are reputable people, they're not fly-by-night companies. If you proceed through the process, you find a quote that looks interesting, you want more information, then you can actually transmit your info over to the actual company. And then once you're with the company, the way the process with most of them works, I'm just sharing with people how it went for me, right? I worked with a company called Solar is Freedom. And they're locally based. They're actually based in Columbus. We're talking about smart cities. They use panels that were made in the USA. I know for some people that probably is not relevant, but for some people I know that can be a bonus. So they're manufactured here. And what they do is they set you up with a rep. And what the rep does is they work with an engineer to do a sample design for your home. So they use a satellite image, Google Maps, and they have a program that shows them the shading that could be relevant to your home. In other words, you got these trees, or how much sun are you going to have throughout the day because of the angle the sun's at and when it sets. And what they do is they create, and this is an industry standard program, so it's not like, one company designed its own. It's most of the companies use the same program for this. And it shows them the shading, and then they can design a system based off of what kind of sun your roof gets and where your roof gets the sun from, right? And maybe a rooftop, they may come back and say, hey, rooftops probably doesn't make a lot of sense for you. You got too much shade. But if you have this land over here, we could stick it here, and you got no shade over here. So that's going to work. So that's kind of how that process works. They'll give you, usually a satellite image of your house, and they'll say, here's where we're proposing putting your panels. And here's what we expect your energy generation to be. You usually provide them a copy of your utility bill, because most people's utility bills nowadays, if you look, they show you your usage over the past 12 months, right?
Well, here's the whole thing. When you look at it at the website, is that the payback period is over 20 years. Okay, well, I probably won't own the home for 20 years. So then I have to rationalize that I'm going to get it on the other end when I sell it, that somebody will say, ooh, I'm going to buy it and live here for 15 or 20 years, and this has already been done, so I'm receiving the benefit. So it's you have to also cross that bridge, to have the money to do it, because I just put on a new roof. So now to do something like this is, okay, those are pretty cost prohibitive things to do when you stay in a place. And then you factor in the fact that you lived in a fairly new construction. I live in a 120-year-old farmhouse. So when they start to run these things, oh, well, now we found another, and raise the bill 20, 30% because they ran into wiring or situations that they don't usually run into in new constructions that they run into when you're sitting in a 100-year-old building. So that's what makes me leery, is that for me to pull the trigger, I have to do it to benefit future generations. I'm not going to see the benefit. I'm going to spend more money than I will save in my lifetime if I stay in the same house, which I probably will. So then I have to look at it that, okay, when we go to sell the house, or my family goes to sell the house, when I'm done living there, they will see the return because somebody will pay more for the house because it has solar energy. And that's another hurdle when you reach retirement age and you're starting to get on a more of a fixed income. It's like, okay, those are also factors. If somebody were just to come in to me and say, you know what, we're going to put solar panels on your house and we'll pay for it, and it's all, I'm done. I'm like, I'm there. I believe in it that much. There are these other factors that are holding me back.
Yep. I think the biggest thing, folks, is if you're out there looking, you want to make sure a couple things the company does for you. They should definitely provide you an energy analysis that shows you your payback period. If they're not doing that, go find somebody else, because they're not a reputable. They're just interested in taking your money and running. The other thing is, most reputable companies will provide you a loan option, okay, that is less than, usually by 40 or 50%, what your current electric bill is. So they'll show you, right, you're giving this money every month to the power company. We want you to give us, just say your average bill is $175. We want you to give us $125. Okay. And so what should end up happening is you should end up paying approximately the same every month for about 2 or 3 years. So you're not actually out any additional money on the residential side. Because usually, again, if you don't find somebody that's offering you a no money down option, keep looking, because there are lots of companies out there that are no money down. There's nothing out of pocket.
You pay them off of your electric savings. So
exactly.
You don't necessarily get that money back in your budget from your electric bill, but you can use it to pay for the services that they gave you.
Yes. And the return improves over time because obviously the price of your panels doesn't change over time, but the cost of electricity does. So that is one of those, and that's part of why it is tough for people, is it is the benefit you get 1 year after it versus the benefit you're getting 10 years after it, the benefit's larger. You get a benefit, right? I mean, I'm getting a benefit from it. I'm giving less money to the power company, and I've invested in something that improves the value of my home. So that's a good thing. At the same time, my monthly out-of-pocket's not really very different yet. 5 years from now, when electric prices have increased an average of 3 to 5% annually, I'm going to start to I'll be seeing a bigger savings, right? And then 10 years out, same thing. The longer it goes, right, the bigger savings I'm going to get from it. And that's part of what Lance is referring to, because if you're only going to be in your home for a few years, you have to be prepared to be willing to wait for somebody that values solar, right? Because you should be able to get 10, 20, 40,000 more dollars out of your home because it's got solar. But not everybody is going to care about that, not yet anyway. I mean, I'm sure someday that's just going to be your home better have solar or I'm not buying it.
Exactly. Right.
But we're not there yet, right? We're not there yet. So yeah, lots to think about, but if you're interested, check out energysage.com. It's a nice, no risk, kind of no hassle sort of way to just get some real easy, well, about what would this cost me? How would this work? What would this look like? A nice way to dip your toe in the water if you're kind of looking at stuff. But that's why we have these conversations, right, Lance? Is because we want to have that dialogue with folks.
You bet. Solar energy, smart cities, let's make the world a better place. This is just one way. And True Chat's mission is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. We've done that and given people food for thought. And share it with others. Have that conversation in your office. Find people who have done it, who have put solar in, and find out what their situation is and what they've seen. And maybe it's something you want to look into. Share the show. If people say, well, where do you find these great ideas to talk about here at the water cooler? Then tell them, well, they can find the show on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere podcasts are found.
And just rename the show the Water Cooler Hour. The State of Us is available Tuesdays and Thursdays. You get new episodes as a podcast those days by 4 a.m. Eastern Time. We can also be heard on the weekends in select talk radio markets around the country. Check your local AM or FM station. For the State of Us on True Chat in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our producer, Bradley Butch, and thank you all, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.